Hello, I'm going to talk about why I decided to go off of benzodiazepines. I have been on and off so many medications. At 17, I went on antidepressants, and they caused me to be not okay. I harmed myself, and I was in the hospital, and they put me on a second medication before I ended up in the hospital. So I was on a mood stabilizer and an antidepressant. So then I went off of those, and from like 18 to 21 almost, I wasn't on those kind of medications. Then at 21, I was put on benzodiazepines in the hospital. I was put on Ativan. I was sent home with Ativan. And I was put on an antidepressant also. When the antidepressant started making me feel really crazy, they switched me to lithium. So I had to go off of antidepressants. I had to go off of everything, and then go on to lithium after it had been out of my system. So I was still on benzos and switched to Xanax. So I was on lithium and Xanax and Buspirone and Lunesta all at the same time for a little over 2 years. When I found out I was pregnant at like 23, I went off of all of those in one day. So I was really sick, and my doctor didn't seem to think it would be a big deal to just cold turkey quit all 4 in one day. So that is what I did. I was really, really sick. I started losing a lot of weight, and the pregnancy was terrible. I didn't know at the time that there was like a benzo withdrawal, because I didn't know anything about them. I just thought it was like just another anxiety medicine. And I thought it was like the right medicine for me. I thought I had found the right one for me. I didn't know that you weren't supposed to be on it for more than like 60 days or something, 90 days. So after I was done nursing, I went back on Xanax. And then where I live, they made it hard to get that. So they switched me to Klonopin. But Klonopin made me feel like I needed to go drink alcohol. It made me really weird. It made me feel like I needed to go to the bar, which I never went to. And it made me want to be around people. It made me really, really not myself. So I tried to find a doctor who could give me Xanax, but I had a hard time. So I got put on Valium instead. I took Valium for the next few years. I went off for another pregnancy almost all the way. Like, they told me to just take it, like a lower dose, but I went off all the way, except for like an emergency. And then after I was done nursing, I went back on it again. And during all these years, I was on and off other stuff too, like Seroquel and stuff like that. But I never went back on antidepressants. I tried a lot of them, and they all did the same stuff. I just didn't talk about all of them, because I'm just trying to mostly talk about why I went off of benzos. But, so I was on 20 milligrams of Valium every day, and I felt like I needed to switch to something less strong, because I felt like I was doing better. So I asked my doctor, who is just a nurse, actually, and she switched me to Klonopin. So I found out later you're not supposed to do that, because Klonopin has a short half-life and Valium has a long half-life. So she put me into really bad withdrawal, and I didn't know that. So I was in Klonopin and Valium withdrawal at my house feeling like I was dying. I felt like I had the flu. My body hurt. And so finally I called, asked if I could be switched back to Valium because I knew that's what I needed to do. But they were like, she's out of town and there's no doctor in this entire area, so you have to go to the hospital. So I did. And when I got there, they were confusing and I was in bad shape. And they were just treating me like I was just like a crazy person, or like, I don't like to use that term, but just like they were treating me like I wasn't making sense and stuff when I was pretty clear about what was going on. And that I told them, like, my doctor told me to come here so I could get switched back to my medication. So they tried to put me on Ativan, but I was like, no, that I need to be put on Valium, which is like my original medication. And the guy was like, this isn't Taco Bell. And I was like, okay, well, if you give me Ativan, it's gonna really cause problems for me. Like, I'm not gonna react well. It's on my allergy list, so you're not gonna do that. So finally, they agreed to give me Valium, but they also had someone evaluate me. And since I was having flashbacks because the hospital was so upsetting, they decided to pink slip me. So I had to stay at the emergency room for 7 days. And then I was transferred to a psych ward. But when I went to the hospital, I was on the amount of 20 milligrams of Valium, but I was on the Klonopin instead. But she'd give me less Klonopin, so not even enough to make up for the 20 milligrams of Valium. So I asked for them to put me back on 20 milligrams of Valium, and they said, we can't do that. We have to do 15. We're not allowed to give people more than 15 per day. So I had to start tapering in the hospital without choosing to. And it was very scary. Like, it was a scary experience. I had my husband bring me this bralette thing that had like little pockets in it to put padding in. So when they would give me the Valium, I could spit it out really fast and put half of it in there so that I could get through the whole day with 15 milligrams instead of 20, but I could take it at my own pace. Then over those 7 days, I was so sick. I was throwing up. I was still in the hospital the whole time. I did yoga. I told them I was praying. I told them I was religious and I had to do yoga. And I told them I don't want people coming in during that. So I would tell them that I was busy in prayer, and then no one would come in. So I got to do yoga for long periods of time without people checking on me because there was like a camera. And I couldn't really barely eat. So at the time I wasn't vegan, so I drank chicken broth to just sustain me because I was so sick. And then my husband, I'm lucky to have him because he was bringing me like these protein shakes at the time, and I was able to keep that down. And then my mom brought me a bag of walnuts, and that was really helpful too. So then no one told me that my medicine was what was making me sick. I just like thought something was like super wrong with me. So I went off my blood pressure medicine because I thought it was causing me problems. And then in the hospital, I also went off of sleeping pills. So I was just on 15 milligrams of Valium. Well, during that hospital stay, it was extremely hard. I cried so much. I had no idea what was wrong with my body. I was having like horrible night sweats and like passing out and throwing up, and they were telling me like, oh, you're not going to be able to be transferred to the psych ward if you're still so unstable and sick. And I was like, okay, well, I can't help it, so maybe you should do something about it to help me feel better, like an IV or something. And they were like, well, if we give you an IV, like then you'll be waiting even longer. So I was like, okay. So I just tried to deal with it. And no one told me that I was in benzo withdrawal, and I had no idea because I thought, hey, I'm back on Valium, so I'm fine. But if you even start tapering and lower it at all, you can go into withdrawal. You can actually go into withdrawal on benzos before you even taper. Like, it's called intolerance. It's called, I don't know, it might be tolerance. Like, when you hit tolerance, when you're on benzos, but then they suddenly stop working and you need more of them, it's because you are in withdrawal already. So when I got transferred to the psych ward, I explained what happened, and I explained that I didn't belong there, and they actually believed me, so they got my paperwork ready right away, and instead of having to stay there for 3 business days, whatever that means, court days, I got to go home the next day. It was a very scary hospital experience. They cut my Valium down to 10 because they weren't allowed to give me 15, and I think she was trying to see how I would react, which is really horrible. But in the last few days, it had been so horrible for me, and I had been taking it at my own pace, and I had a feeling that I just did not want to rely on people to feel okay. I didn't want to rely on the pharmacy to have my medication on time. I didn't want to rely on the government to have my medication. I didn't want to rely on my body to react to medication and need it to be okay. I did not know how serious benzos were yet, so I just felt like I need to get off of this all the way. So by the time I got to the psych ward, I was already on 10 per day, but it was still really scary for them to cut it down because it was harder for me to get through, but it was lucky that I only had to stay that night and the next morning. When I got out of the hospital, I had only taken 7 milligrams that day. So I decided to keep it there. So for the next year, I would be tapering from 7 milligrams down to 5 and remaining stable, in my opinion, for 3 months on 5 milligrams. And then for 3 days, I took 2.5 milligrams, and then I decided to just stop taking it. So I stopped on January 13th, 2018. Don't taper like that ever. Don't go off like me. There's this manual called the Ashton Manual, and it shows you how to slowly taper instead, because cold turkey quitting is really dangerous. So I quit the 13th of January. My withdrawal did not start till 12 days later. So yeah, the reason that I went off is because it was too scary to rely on everybody. It was too scary to rely on a chemical to make myself feel okay. And then as it was leaving my body and I was getting into the hospital and feeling that way, I realized how serious it was, that it was changing me and that it was making me so sick and that my body needed it. I was chemically dependent on it. It's not the same as an addiction where you just need more, and you just want it. It's like a chemical addiction. You can't help it. It affects the GABA receptors in your brain, and that controls a lot of functions in your body. So when I went off, I even had problems with bladder issues and blood in my urinary tract that I had swelling. I had swelling in my intestines. I had vision problems. That I could go on and on about how GABA affects, how much your body relies on GABA receptors. But I just, I realized how it was just stealing my life, and I knew something was wrong. So I decided it's time to go off. I don't care what happens. I just have to do this. And so, yeah, I had no idea what would happen to me. I had no idea what I would be like after, and I had no idea yet how bad Valium was or benzos. I met this girl online 2 days after I quit, and she had just gone through withdrawal 3 years before. So I'm really thankful that I found her, because without her, I would have not known what was going on. So as soon as I realized how chemically dependent I was, and how dangerous of a medication it was, and how people were dying, then I really knew that I needed to stay off of it and never take it again. So the more I learned, the more I knew that I made a good decision. So yeah, I've been off for 3 years, a little more than 3 years. I don't know, I feel super happy about that, and so I just wanted to talk about why I went off.